Greetings from 8,000 feet above sea level. We're here on the site of the Haleakalā volcano, where pretty much every single plant we're going to see today is a native, endemic, or otherwise rather rare. We're going to start right here with this guy. It's going to jump right in because quite literally everything here is worth talking about. So we'll start with one of the important native favorite trees. Hawaii has a whole bunch of native trees in the family Fabaceae, as you tend to get in the tropics and in the warmer regions of the world, at least up here in the northern hemisphere. And this guy, though, is a cold weather variant of it. This is Sophora.
All right, pause, because right out the gate, I'm already making a really stupid mistake. So the yellow flower you see in this picture is actually an invasive species. That's Onothera stricta that was growing up inside the Sophora that I was looking at. Don't worry, I get actual flowers of the Sophora in a other video cut in like 2 seconds, but yes, that is an invasive species, Onothera stricta, fragrant evening primrose, which you can actually see. Look at the stem right underneath it. Look at the alternate leaves. Look at the fact that they're simple instead of compound like the leaves in the top left. I'm an idiot. I don't know how I made that mistake, but yeah, Onothera stricta, not a native plant, but we get good footage of the Sophora in a second. Just be patient.
Leaves are, of course, move this back a little bit. Leaves are, of course, going to be the compound faded leaves that you expect to see. Little fuzzy on the underside there. Sophora chrysophylla, I think, grows substantially lower than here, where it can grow into a much larger tree, but it is a dominant alpine, subalpine species up here at 8,000 feet as well. So we got a lot to see, a lot to do. We're gonna go check out some silver swords. There's quite literally dozens of interesting plants to talk about, and fortunately up here there seems to be not that many invasive species as there are down at the lower elevation. So we'll get started, we'll get to it, and we'll be checking in a little bit. I believe that the native name for this is Montane, but that could be a different one. I'll also show you there. You've got the little bean pods on the thing. So that's a lot nicer to see. Give you the context of how big this thing actually is. Maybe 2 feet tall over here. But I mean, they're growing, stuff's growing larger. We'll get a good view for things, and down in the crater the habitat will look completely different than up here on the rim. And I'll give you a little bit of context on Haleakalā if we can get the view. We'll cover some of the geology, the volcanics. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a great day. Almost everything else that we've done this week has been a warm-up for this moment here. So Sophora chrysophylla, beautiful, beautiful tree right there. Get his little flower and bloom there. Not too many flowers on it. Looked like some of the stuff was flowering a bit, and some of it's going to be in fruit. But we'll if we have to vegetatively, we'll make do. Oh, so we saw a santalum over on the dry side of the island a couple days ago. That one was endemic to Hawaii. That was Santalum ellipticum. This is Santalum Haleakalā. Look at how much bigger this one is. A sandalwood in the family Santalaceae. This one, just like that one, well adapted to, sometimes really dry conditions, but this one's more well adapted to the alpine conditions. This thing's growing huge compared to the other one. This is endemic only to this volcano in the world. And I mean, as you can see, he's giving us a nice little show with those little 4-petaled pink flowers. The other ones we had were yellowish, greenish. And there are the fruits. Opposite leaves. Still, I mean, essentially imbricate. We'll see. This guy's kind of growing in a sheltered area. Maybe that's why it's growing so big. And look at the little yellow margin to the leaves. Opposite leaved, waxy as hell. Clearly, I mean, it only grows here, and it grows here so well. That's the beauty of endemism, is it's things perfectly adapted for areas that are completely unique. Flowers aren't really anything to write home about. Maybe that's why they cleared out so much of the native shrub. All the native plants we've seen so far, with the exception of the few of the hibiscus family members, they're not very showy, but I mean, they're generally, I mean, look at that. That's a beautiful plant. Tell me somebody wouldn't want that planted out front of their house. We don't have any really sandalwoods where we're from, so these are cool to see. Yeah, look at even the flower buds. are so beautiful. And they have such a distinct look to them. This one's way bigger than the Santalum ellipticum. Pretty nice. And then again, growing with Pukiawe, this whole Sophora chrysophylla, this whole catalog of just plants perfectly adapted to grow on the side of a relatively cold, wet and rainy and windy 10,000 foot shield volcano. How about that? We're gonna keep going. We barely made any distance, but these are all target species, so we're gonna talk about them before we really get into the thick of it. Okay, and there you go. That's the hot bush. We've seen this guy on the island already. This is a really common and versatile native shrub. Not at all endemic here to Maui or to Haleakalā, like the Sophora over there is a Hawaiian endemic. But the an important tree in multiple different habitats, a very variable shrub. And this guy, unlike the ones you were seeing down closer to the sea level, those samaras are flushing red. It's kind of nice. It's a real pretty plant. This is actually used as an ornamental species, not just on Hawaii, but in other regions that will, support its growth. And despite the fact that it's, 50 degrees up here, 8,000 feet, it does rarely freeze, go below freezing if you go a little bit higher than this. This is still a relatively stable, above freezing area. I think that maybe, you're looking at 40 to 60 degrees on most days between that. And so far, the wind hasn't been that big of a problem, but we'll see how that treats us as we kind of cross over the rim here and really get into it. So stay tuned. Dodonia viscosa, just in a different ecotype than it is down at sea level, growing with the Sophora chrysophylla, kind of as the dominant tree cover here. And right here is one of the I think more underrated radiations you have on Hawaii. So everybody knows the silver swords, which we'll certainly be getting into today, and the hibiscus. There's also a radiation of endemic geraniums to Hawaii. This one's not in bloom, but this is Geranium cuneatum. They call this the hina hina, which I guess that name comes from the silvery leaves. And sure enough, you can see those fruits there. Things not in bloom, or at least I haven't seen one in bloom. But sure enough, there are your typical storksbill-esque geranium fruits. This is like a nice low shrub here. There's a few other endemic species of geranium you get potentially alongside this trail, but I'm not so sure if we're going to get to see them. The Geranium cuneatum is the one that is the most abundant of those of that radiation. So, pretty interesting. A little bit more exciting than our Geranium maculatum at home. And again, growing up in this shrubland of blueberry, of vaccinium, and leptocephala. Pretty nice. Okay, so here we're working with a few more of our keystone species here. You've of course still got the Sophora chrysophylla. You also have Pukiawe, the leptocephala tame, which is a member of the Epacroideae subfamily. So it's in the family Ericaceae, which we're quite familiar with where I'm from in New England, but it is in its own weird little subfamily that is predominantly endemic to the southern hemisphere. This one species here does make it to a few places in the Pacific. It's not technically endemic to Hawaii, but the Hawaiian alpine shrubland tends to be what it's most noted as being a component of. Right next to it, it's a more familiar member of the family Ericaceae. Well, not this exact species, but this genus. You have one of the endemic vaccinium, the ohelo, as they call it. No clue what species this one is. Could be any of the three. And in fact, I think all three do occur in this general area, but dentatum and reticulatum will be the more common ones in the alpine zone, whereas calicinum, which we saw over on the other side of the island, and the more tropical, like a upland subtropical zone, is more of the bog-dwelling one. So it could be either or. I'm gonna have to figure out how to key it. They're notoriously difficult to key out, but this thing is getting some height here, and I'll show you something cool. So you have the macro lens. I have the actual camera out for this special occasion. Just look at how intricate that foliage is. In a Epacrid here on what technically constitutes U.S. soil, and almost everything up here has some sort of wax, some sort of fine hairs on the back of the leaves, some sort of adaptation. These are the fruits, no flowers. If I see flowers, I'll pull off and I'll get pictures of them. But this thing is fully in fruit here now. The Leptocephala, and there's a couple berries on the vaccinium, but those seem to get picked off readily by the native birds, because they could be, I would presume, to be covered in them. But we'll keep going on here now. We'll see if I can keep my camera dry, and my water pack is like leaking, so we'll see how that ends up playing out for us. But dominant plants, nowhere else in the world, perfectly adapted. In fact, look, here's another one here, right down there, Coprosma montana, with the little orange fruits on it, huh? That's a member of the coffee family. You thought we were done with the coffee family, but in fact we are not. Coprosma montana, one of quite a few endemic Coprosma to Hawaii. There's a blackberried one that we're hoping to see too. Montana has the orange and yellow fruits, and Aranaranoides, not ebenoides. I thought it was ebenoides, but it's Aranaranoides or some weird name like that, is the one that's endemic to just the alpine areas of Hawaii and Maui. So that's a pretty fascinating one. Again, kind of looks like this one's more of a shrub, less of a tree than some of the other species we've seen so far. And as you can tell, if you get down lower to the ground, the plants are able to splay their foliage out a bit more. We'll see if we can get flowers on any of these as we kind of get off this really wet, rainy part of the ridge here. But yeah, there's the leaves on that Coprosma. Still going to be opposite, huh? Imbricate, when they're all folded up like that, it's called imbricate, almost mimicking a conifer. How fascinating. And there you go. There's our first member of the Silver Sword Alliance, but the less famous of there's really two that people get to see often. This one and the actual silver sword. This is Debatium and Zecii. So this is in that same radiation of plants that the famous silver sword, which is not up here, that's further down in the crater, is in. Now, Debatium and Zecii is a shrub. It's not monocarpic, unlike the silver sword, but we'll get to that in a bit. It does, however, have this incredibly cool-looking imbricate foliage. Debatium and Zecii, endemic to the, it's almost kind of sticky, it feels like plastic, endemic to the alpine areas of Hawaii. Silver sword radiation. I'll get onto the whole spiel. Just remember that for right now. No flowers on this guy, but it is a member of the family Asteraceae. This is the same family as sunflowers. It's just got here and done some insane stuff. This one doesn't even have like spent inflorescences on it. We'll talk about more about that radiation when we get down to see the silver swords. Hey, there you go. There's a flower on one of the geraniums. Not really much to write home about, but that is Geranium cuneatum. Little 5-petaled flower. That's a beautiful plant, though. Again, geraniums, not much to get excited about until they're, endemic volcano-dwelling island plants growing in a tropical montane shrubland, such as we find ourselves in now. The color here is beautiful, even with stuff, not everything blooming. But again, in the tropics, things kind of bloom sporadically. This is not the main time of year when they do as such. But, you can usually find 1 or 2 flowers on most of these plants, with a few exceptions. We're going to keep an eye out. Geranium cuneatum, that's a nice one. I was worried I wasn't going to get to see that one when I was first researching things. I thought it was a little bit more uncommon than it actually seems to be. And with any luck, yeah, I switched to the phone. Unfortunately, the camera was getting drenched in the mist here. With any luck, we might get a little bit of sun breaking. We'll see what happens. Sephora chrysophylla. Here are the flowers in a little better condition. You can readily tell that that's a pea. Old spent fruits over there. Flowers in bud here. What a beautiful tree. The fabaceae trees, a lot of the really important trees on Hawaii are in Fabaceae. And a lot of them are endemic, and a lot of them are directly competing with the non-native, Acacia, Vichelia, Lucana. Really nasty business. Probably pretty cool trees where they occur, because these are among some of the toughest bastards. I'd even mention that Santalum back there is parasitic, and the Fabaceae, these guys fix nitrogen. So everything's got to have a gimmick. There's no carnivorous plants up here, not really. I don't believe so anyway. You got to have some sort of gimmick The sandalwood is parasitic. The Fabaceae, they're tapping in, they're using bacteria in their roots to make nitrogen in the soil. Ericaceae can do that as well. Everybody's got a gimmick of some sort, but that is a beautiful tree. I'm really happy to finally see some of these native Fabaceae. The flowers on them are huge compared to the pea flowers we see back home. That's a beautiful tree. There you go, there's a Sadleria. I don't think this is Cyanthoides. I think this is, or maybe this Sadleria Cyanthoides. Pallida is the other one. I forget which is which, but this is one of the, you know, really dominant ferns up here at elevation. You can really get a gist of what the conditions are like. And this guy is just happy as a clam. When they get in the full sun, down like the crater, because this does occur down in the crater, they take on a beautiful red color. And I love how the actual, what do you call them there? The pinna kind of do that overlapping thing. We saw this species, it was a Sadleria. This species or a different species on the first day we were here. Look at those sori. That's unique. That's pretty cool. And the Sadleria, I can't remember if it's an endemic genus or if Hawaii just has a number of endemic species, but this one is endemic to Hawaii as well. Likes the alpine, and it will also colonize lava fields too. Sadleria, I forget, you'll have to excuse me, I do forget the family right now, and conditions are making it difficult for me to do anything other than cling to my phone and try my best to stay dry. Look at it out here. It's like you're in the shower. God, you're never going to get away from Rubiaceae in Hawaii, it seems. This is another Coprosma. This one is endemic just to Maui and Hawaii, the Big Island, at the alpine areas. I think it grows above, I'll put down below what it grows above if I can figure that information out. But this one, as you can see, has these weird black berries. Reminds me so much of a, what you call it there, of a crowberry. And in fact, if it had any flowers on it, which it doesn't, you can even see the flowers on these things. I'll put up a stock photo if I don't find any. Even do that weird dioecious crowberry looking thing where they're so reduced it's hard to tell they're even flowers. It's almost like trying to pretend like it's a conifer. Coprosma Ernioides, I think Ernioides or something like that. It's hard for me to say it. Coprosma Ernioides. The common name for this one in Hawaiian is Kukae Nene, which literally means nene shit. I guess because both the nenes like to eat this one, and their poop looks like it, which would make sense because if they're eating it, of course their crap would look like it too. But this one, unlike Coprosma montana, is growing in this decumbent, sprawling form, whereas Coprosma montana gets a little bit more height on it. Look, you can see it here. Forms these nice trailing branches. Got more vaccinium. Still can't tell which of these vaccinium is which. They're really hard to key apart. Some of them are reticulatum. I'm going to go ahead and guess that dentatum is the one with the more dentate leaves. But what the hell do I know? Look at the berries on this one. See, these just got pollinated. It's got to have flowers on it somewhere, I'm sure. Because some of these berries are still fresh. Maybe I passed them and just didn't pay attention. We're on the lookout for Tetramelopum too. Not a silver sword aster, but still one of the cool endemic asters to the Hawaiian alpine. Feels weird saying that, Hawaiian alpine. You wanted a tropical, I get the deer fence here. Actually, that's probably to keep us from falling into the crater now that I think about it. The, you know, the Hawaiian alpine, you don't think of those two things together. Wouldn't you believe it? There was only one other car in the parking lot. You guys are all missing out on this. It's about 50 degrees and driving rain, and I couldn't be happier. I'm like a kid in a goddamn candy store up here. Look at this habitat. You have to come here to see this. You cannot replicate this anywhere else in the world. And fortunately up here, the conditions are so rough, it's just really, really difficult. Fortunately, really difficult, but not impossible for the invasive species to kind of take hold here like they have down at the lower elevations. It's absolutely brutal stuff seeing what's happened down at the lower elevations. One of the endemic sedges there, I'm not sure which one, maybe a Morlotia. There's a Morlotia and there's actual Carex that are both endemic up here. Ooh, and as I'm talking, I look over and I spy with my little eye a nice little set of vaccinium flowers there. Again, I forget which one's which. Look at the little recurved tip of the corolla there. That's a blueberry flower, my friend. Couldn't be any more sure of it anywhere. Couldn't be any more sure of it. So this is one of them. Vaccinium dentatum or Vaccinium reticulatum. I'll have to take as many pictures as I can and keep them out after. It just seems like a fool's errand to try to do it right now. But rest assured, nice native Vaccinium. This one's actually covered in flowers here. Pretty nice. Pretty freaking nice. Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this is Vaccinium dentatum, just from those leaf margins and the fact that this one doesn't feel quite, I mean, everything up here feels like fucking plastic. It feels like fake, actually it feels like fake, but this one's got those nice dentate margins. So I'm sure, despite the fact that these things, there's one of the fruits on it, despite the fact that these things can overlap and they both technically have dentate margins, this one to me, gun to my head, I'm going to call this one Vaccinium dentatum. Also, this one's not growing like a shrub. This one's more decumbent like Vaccinium calicinum, whatever it was. So I'm going to place my bets that this is dentatum. Another one of the three endemic Hawaiian Vaccinium. We've seen every single species of Ericaceae, every single species in Ericaceae native to Hawaii. This isn't New England where you've got 100 of them. The Ericaceae are successful here because they form some of the keystone plants, but they're not very diverse. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Yeah. Pukiawe. Yeah, see, here's the other Vaccinium. See how this one, it's got dentate margins. If you really, really look, like barely dentate, but it's, you know, kind of got a different form factor to it. But again, I guess these can just overlap so much in a habitat, shape, whatever. There's the Pukiawe. So there's three of the four right there. Endemic Vaccinium. Although Leptocephala tamiyamiyami, though kind of a keystone Hawaiian plant, it's actually the one not endemic. The one they named after Kamehameha is not the endemic one, but they named the rest of them after actual characteristics of the plants. They didn't name them after some dead guy, which is always cool, though. Kamehameha. Oh, he's not some dead guy. He was the fucking king. He was the freaking king of Hawaii. So that to me gets a pass. A lot of this stuff is Menziesii, Douglasii, a lot of the European or American or wherever they're from scientists that really described a lot of these species. And you know, I'm still trying to at least use the sometimes the endemic names are cool because they do tell you something about the plant, like the kukai nene shit. Nene, eat it. See, the Hawaiians got the idea. They got the idea behind a good scientific name. All right, we're gonna keep moving. Okay, got some more ferns going. Of course, Pukiawe is omnipresent, as are these Vaccinium here. What I believe we have folded up in the corner here, feeling like plastic, based on those round sori. It's actually a species of Polypodium. You know, we've got Polypodium virginianum where we live. This is Polypodium pellucidum. This is a absolute expert at colonizing early volcanic lava flows. So we're going to see it in a little bit more iconic habitat down below, ideally. Also, we've got an asplenium, because no matter where you are in the world, you're never going to escape asplenium. I believe this to be Asplenium adiantum nigrum, the black spleenwort, and unlike Polypodium pellucidum, which is a highly specialized lava flow colonizer, the Asplenium adiantum nigrum here, this grows all over the place. Black spleenwort, this is actually a pretty common species globally, but likes the you know, misty hillsides. I think it's usually a montane species where it grows. Vaccinium dentatum, living up to its name now. And the Polypodium pellucidum always seems to be folded up like that for some reason. It must just be to keep up with the UV in all the exposure. So nice little cliffside habitat here. And then of course you go over to here, still no view. And what appears to be also folded up, but not in the same way. Oh, I misunderstood. When you got closer, that is certainly a Polypodium. The sori from way back looked like those rectangular sori the Sadleria had. That threw me off for a moment there. Polypodium pellucidum. We're going to see them really doing this thing down below in the crater where I think they get a little bit bigger than this, and they're almost dominant on the bare exposed lava flows. Yeah, you can see all the Sadleria just hanging out in this gully that goes down. We're going to hike out across this, I guess what passes for a ridge, and snake our way down into the crater. But just imagine if it wasn't completely foggy, the kind of view you'd have. That looks damn Jurassic. A'amu or amu, I think is the Hawaiian name for these ferns. And some of them are flushing red, but I'm guessing it's usually pretty foggy up here, because these guys down in the crater, from the pictures I've seen, are almost always completely flushed bright red. It's pretty cool. Cyanthoides, I think they get that name because they resemble maybe like a tree fern, Cyanthiaceae. I still can't tell if my backpack is leaking out of the water or if I'm just collecting moisture. I'm hoping I'm just collecting moisture, because running out of water would be a pretty bummer thing to happen. Look at this hairy little tongue fern. I'm 90% sure this is one of the elaphoglossums, one of these weird tongue ferns or weeping ferns, whatever they call them. Not one of the epiphytic ones you've been seeing, and they turn their whole backside just rusty with this color. You get the Coprosma aranioides here. You've got this, what I imagine, based on the sori, almost resembles like a Dryopterus or a relative. I'm not too certain what that could be. Something maybe in Dryopteridaceae. And then, of course, Sileria cyanthoides. Nice collection of ferns here. Not seeing much moss. I mean, there's moss here, but it's not the same blankets of moss and peat you get in the White Mountains or you get in New England in general. And it's starting to dawn on me why that is. Most of these plants are not deciduous. They're not constantly shedding their leaves, and there is no winter dormant season here. So thus, the ground just remains soil and clay. I mean, you've got some grasses, some sedges, a couple of the species. Obviously the ferns drop their fronds, but you're not getting that yearly turnover of just decaying material forming a mat. I do know, just based on research, what I've read, the soil here is considered to be pretty acidic, but it's not that same. It's just not that same type of substrate where you're getting the draping moss mats overhanging. Though you would expect them, plenty of ferns, but the moss and peat situation is not what it is. There's no peatlands in this part of Hawaii. They do have bogs. You can see those are the trunks of the Sadleria there. They do have bogs on Hawaii that are all but inaccessible, to people. But on the montane habitat here on Haleakalā, at whatever we're at, 7,500 feet now, maybe coming down from where we started. It's just not the extensive boggy peat mats that I'm so used to seeing and so used to associating with this type of habitat. Yeah, those Sadleria are nice. That's a really beautiful genus of fern. I didn't even bother to look up the state of the genus. I think maybe the genus is endemic to Hawaii. Certainly the species is endemic to Hawaii. Let's keep moving on. We keep almost getting breaks of sun, and it's teasing us. It's just teasing us. So, although Hawaii does have endemic asplenium, I can't show any of them to you because the ones that are growing here grow elsewhere in the world. And so does this cool fern here. You know how much I love chilanthoid ferns. This is a Palea. This is Palea ternifolia. It's kind of goofy looking though, huh? See the sori there, the spores are wrapped up in those leaves. This is the Trans-Pecos cliff break, and this is like all over, whatever. I think they get this in South America, maybe even the southwestern United States. We get some sun coming out, just starting to break on us now. So things are looking up. But this is a chilanthoid fern, subfamily Chilanthoideae. A lot of these are just adapted to roasting in the sun. And if that sun gets any hotter, I could totally see why these guys are growing here and doing so well. Again, they're Enteridaceae with the P, and their main cool feature is the fact that they seal up their spores inside the little ridges of their pinna there, of their leaves. It's a fascinating plant. Another cool fern. Hawaii's got no shortage of cool ferns, both endemic and even when they're, not endemic, just simply native here. They're still fascinating. Palea ternifolia. What do we see? We saw the Asplenium adiantum nigrum. They're supposed to have Asplenium trichomanes here too. Yeah, here comes the sun. It would appear. We'll see what happens. We'll cross our fingers. Well, that's a familiar face. Asplenium trichomanes right there. A different subspecies than what we get in New England. We get two subspecies in New England, actually. There's the sori, sure enough. God, I love this plant. One of my favorite ferns. So near global distribution, but everybody's got their own little endemic subspecies. I think this is subspecies densum, which is endemic to Hawaii. So it's the same species we get, same species complex at least, but it's its own little subspecies. And just like back home, sorry, I gotta shake my camera off. The water's dripping from my hat onto it. Just like our splenium back home, they love the damp, lithophyte communities that they find themselves in. Although this one's growing up at about 7,000 something feet with Pukiawe and Coprosma, Ebenoides, Vaccinium dentatum, all these lovely endemic and interesting Hawaiian species. He fits right in. Asplenium trichomanes, subspecies densum. Don't ask me what differentiates the subspecies. I don't know. I don't even know if you can tell morphologically the difference between them. But yeah, you'll find this thing growing pretty much globally. We find it in New England too. So that's kind of funny to see. One of the species that's native both here and there. There's a strawberry that we passed, and I thought we were going to see it again, because at that point I was still wigging out, and that's a whole cool story there that we'll have to talk about if we run into that guy again, which I will pass it on the way back anyway. So as we descend into the crater of Haleakalā, you kind of get an idea for what the geology is doing here. So we are in a volcanic crater, and Haleakalā is a shield volcano. Now, my understanding of volcanics, again, where I come from, most of the volcanics we're dealing with are flood basalts. So those have opened up in rift valleys. Actually, no, that's not true. Let me step back a second. Haleakalā is a shield volcano, okay? Haleakalā, Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, all of the Hawaiian islands are predominantly made up of shield volcanoes. Now, shield volcanoes, generally speaking, and I may be speaking out of turn here, are the byproduct of what are known as volcanic hotspots. Now, volcanic hotspots are not associated with any sort of tectonic activity. We are in the middle of the Pacific plate here. However, underneath us, technically a little bit to the southeast of us, on the underneath the Big Island, and then a little bit offshore of that, is a very active hot mantle plume. So now what happens is, as tectonic plates move over the Earth's surface, these mantle plumes technically stay in place. They're below the continental plates, and continental plates are never thinner than where they are basically beneath ocean crust. Now, Hawaii, you can follow the line basically from Midway Atoll all the way to the Big Island of Hawaii, and take note that the islands are getting bigger because that is the more recent volcanism. The smaller islands are the byproduct of erosion. Now, Haleakalā is dormant, but not technically extinct to my knowledge. I believe the last time this volcano would have erupted would have been sometime maybe 400, 500, 600 years ago. That's at least what I've read. It has been dormant since then, and if we could see right now, we'd be looking down probably another 700, 800 feet down into the crater, and we would see the various cinder cones where eruptions have happened. Now, if you're over there in Japan and you're looking at Mount Fuji, which is about 1,200 feet high, a little shorter than Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, a little higher than Haleakalā, it has a different shape to it, and that is because it is a stratovolcano. Last note on this for now, it might come up again later, is the shield volcanoes are generally making that flowing, smooth lava that sort of belches out and runs quickly down the sides of mountains, whereas the stratovolcanoes like Mount Fuji, like Mount Shasta, like Mount Rainier, like Mount St. Helens, that occur on tectonic boundaries, the stratovolcanoes are making those explosive, high high energy eruptions. Two different types of explosions, two different types of volcanoes, two very different types of geology. So actually, underneath New Hampshire, we had a hot spot. Underneath New England, we had a hot spot about 120 million years ago. That's why I doubled back and I said, well, we do technically have two types of volcanism. However, both of those occurred long ago in New England's past, and Haleakalā itself is only about 1 million years old, less than 1/100th the age of the volcanism that was going on underneath New England. But New England did at one time have its own suite of hotspot volcanism, and that's why you get basalt in the Ossipes. That's actually why the Ossipes are a giant ring dike, and we're not in the middle of the ocean. and not going to turn into an atoll like Molokini, Haleakalā at some point will fade into a ring dike, but it'll probably be several. The ocean will unfortunately take it, whereas the US mountains are still, not in the ocean, so they've maintained some of their some evidence of the fact that they were once a volcano. Anyway, that's 4 minutes on volcanism, and I hope you got something out of that. A little bit of context for the topography and the geology here. If I'm not mistaken, this is Artemisia mauiensis. Artemisia, wormwood, what else do they call it? Sagebrush, goes by a whole bunch of different names. I thought these were members of the ragweed tribe at one point. In fact, I'm quoted in a video calling Artemisia a member of the ragweed tribe, but they are not. They're their own separate thing. Where we live, we only have Artemisia vulgaris, which is mugwort, or not mugwort, yeah, that is mugwort, common mugwort, which is not native where we live. But out in the western U.S., there are a whole bunch of native and very, very important artemisias called sagebrush. They go by a million different common names. Member of the family Asteraceae, and they usually are famous for having the really elaborate, chalky foliage. That one, I walked by, I almost thought it was like a moss or something, but it is not. And these ones are another one that I was really hoping I was going to get to see. And hopefully we can find them in bloom. I think that these are when they're supposed to be a little bit more prolific down in the crater, growing in this little rock crevice right out of the basalt with a nice little asplenium. We've still got I actually don't know what this is. I might have to take pictures of this. Oh no, this is Pukiave. This is just him growing. You can look him up. Grow in many variable forms, and unfortunately you have this invasive member of Eupatoriae. I'm 90% sure that that's just Pukiave, the Leptocephala. Some more of the asplenium there, different species of asplenium, asplenium adiantum nigrum, and then asplenium trichomanes there. I believe this to be Artemisia mauiensis, which if it is, I think might be endemic to Maui, or maybe Maui and a couple other islands. But we'll find out. I'll have to actually see if I can find one with flowers and then key the thing out. But it would make sense. There's an Artemisia hawaiiensis too. There's a couple of endemic Artemisias to Hawaii. Well, I'm honestly not sure what this little thing is. I keep seeing it, and it has flowers. Well, it has the remains of flowers on it. Not too sure. I'll have to put what it is below. It wasn't in my notes, which almost makes you want to believe that it's not native, but it looks like it fits right in. I don't know if maybe this is a coprosma or some other type of maybe rubiaceous thing. Who knows? Those flowers, though, aren't really telling me much other than the fact that it's a dicot. I don't know. I actually am at a loss for that one. There's other species of Debati up here, other species of Coprosma. I thought it might have been Pukiave for a second, but you can see that looks like what that looks like here. And this guy, that's hard to tell. Has those little lines in the back of the leaves. So I'm not sure what that is, but it's kind of abundant. Seems to fit in. I hope it's a native that I just didn't account for, and that it's something cool that I can go back and figure out after. But here's what those look like. Kind of almost in full bloom there. No clue. I can't tell you. I don't know. I'll have to figure that one out and get back to you. I didn't take my notebook with me. I should have. Thought it was going to get too wet. Get the little stigma sticking out there. Opposite leaves. It's a weirdo. I'm not too sure. Camera's acting all haywire because it's still humid and wet. Well, we'll get back to you on this one. There you go. There's that Artemisia again. You can see the flowers coming into bud there. I believe Artemisia are generally wind pollinated, so they're in the aster family, but they don't generally have the same like elaborate floral morphology. You see, they do look like a ragweed, so my mistaken thinking that they were in that same tribe Ambrosyne was somewhat substantiated. Get in there nice for you. Pretty cool. Look, I've been looking for a tetramalopium too, but I think you have to go up even higher. I think that's up at the summit, if I'm not mistaken. And just like that, God said, let there be light. I'm not a woo-woo guy, but every once in a while you hear about these areas that are considered sacred or at least revered by different native peoples. And I get this one. I can hear my voice echoing out across the crater here. Going down to a volcanic crater. Let's go look at, oh, I can see one of the little huts. They got the huts down there. Booming out into the crater. I lost my train of thought there. Let's go see some of the cinder cones. Let's go see the silver sword. Let's go see what we actually came here for. I just realized what this is. I know what these little calyces look like. I'm used to this guy being a terrible invasive where I live. This is a lithorum, but it's a native lithorum. I don't believe it's endemic. I just think it's native here. This is a lithorum maritimum. Has the little purple loosestrife flowers. You're related to purple loosestrife, you bastard. I know what you are. Again, I don't believe these are endemic to Hawaii. I could check my notes and get back to you, but I don't really feel like doing that right now. I want to get down to the crater. Yeah, this genus, although we have native ones, most of my familiarity with this genus, Elithrum, comes from Elithrum salicaria. Freaking purple loosestrife. Fuck that plant. This guy is cool, though. I did have him on my native plant sheet, and I finally realized what those calyces look like and just the general habit of the leaves and the coloration of the thing. Finally gave it away. Lithracea, he's in the pomegranate family. And again, I do believe it's native here. This is one that I could have seen in like that alpine shrubland, but I just wasn't looking for it. And no wonder, it's a trailing lithorum. It didn't even occur to me until just now that that's what this is. The flowers, this is the same color. It's that color strikes dread in me typically. No wonder I kind of assumed that it was potentially an invasive. Lithorum maritimum. I'm sorry to accuse you of being invasive. Again, considered native, but I do not believe endemic to Hawaii. I think this has gets to high elevation areas around the Pacific, maybe Asia. I'll put the information down below as I typically do. Cloud cover's coming back in, but we had a nice view for a second there. We're coming down. We're getting there, getting down into the crater. The Pukiave is getting bigger. The Leptocephala tame ame. I like saying that. The Sileria is starting to do the thing that they do. When they unfurl their new fresh fronds, they have this bright, vibrant red color. I can only imagine if it's a fern that's going to be an anthocyanin pigment, not like a. It wouldn't make sense for it to be a carotenoid pigment or anything like that. Still got the Palea ternifolia, and coming down. I'm surprised we haven't run into more Debatia menziesii. I'm gonna have to do a further in-depth thing on that, but I think they might be down here because they hybridize with the silver swords, which I'm hoping we'll see. They look very, very weird, but the plants, as we've come down almost down to 6,500 feet now, but down from 800, are getting a little bit more robust, a little bit bushier. And it would seem that they're a little bit more sheltered down in the crater, as one, could reasonably expect. So, yeah, lovely sedge there. I'll have to get the name of that for you. Some cool grasses in here that I might not put in the video, but I'll at least put them up on iNet. There's the Champsia, there's a Luzula. I think I got pictures of the Luzula, which is the only native Juncus, the only native Juncaceae member I think I've encountered. But I digress. I'm just eating up time. We're going to take the last few steps down here to the crater and go from there. All right, there we go. We got a little treat. Debatia menziesii actually in bloom. And as you can see by the bifid stigma, and the fact that these are just your standard issue Asteraceae floral affair, this weirdo is nothing more than a member of the sunflower family. I was hoping I would get to see this guy again. Look at how, just like, what do you even say about that? Everything here is designed to be alternating between being baked in the sun and drenched in the water at temperatures that are not that high. So everything here is going to be waxy, imbricate, maximizing, water, basically trying to keep the leaves from burning up in the sun, while also having to deal with the fact that if it's not exposed blazing sun and wind, it's soaked in moisture. These ones are the fruits that have dropped off, and these are the fruits that are still ready to go, or the flowers that are still ready to go. It's just an aster flower. We've talked about it a million times. clusters of individual flowers, maybe about 5 or 6 per capitula there. There's your calyx, or your phyllaries, bifid stigma, and secondary pollen presentation. Same thing, just repeating the same adaptation over and over again. There's that pollen tube in the female part that pushes the pollen out at the top. I'm happy we get to see one of these in bloom. This one's kind of shrimpy. Looks like it's gotten beaten by the trail side there, and just has the leaves at the top portion. I think we'll be seeing some more of this guy down in the crater, and I'm looking forward to seeing his cousin, the silver sword, momentarily. There you go. The Baltium and ZCI actually in bloom this time. What a weirdo, but still just an aster. And just one, again, we'll talk about the whole radiation. I'll get the camera back out for the actual silver sword, and we'll talk about the whole radiation of these things in Hawaii. And that's what it looks like inside a volcanic crater. Looks like mostly non-native grasses up here, but we're gonna progress through. Things get a little sandier and a little different as you hike across, but we're down inside the thing now. So we'll see what there is to see. Check this out, see these things right here? Those are the stigmas, or styles I should say, of Leptocephala tamiyamiyami. Those are the female flowers. Thing does the same thing that like Carema conradii does. Very similar habit, very similar entire vibe to the thing. I think that the coprosma, unless this is a coprosma, I'm stupid. This might be a coprosma. I'm not sure. The berries aren't ripe. Well, that's definitely... Actually, no, this is a coprosma. Sorry. This is coprosma I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry. Urnarioides or something like that. But those stigmas, it basically does the same thing that our Carema conradii does. The flowers are so reduced, they're basically not even recognizable as flowers. Those are the female ones. Those are the ones that, yeah, this guy's, I see now. They basically turn into those little blackberries. The kukanene, the nene poop, the nene food. I still haven't seen any of the flowers on the Leptocephala tamiyamiyami, but I had the two briefly mixed up in my mind there as to what was what. Tons of Polypodium pellucidum down here, growing much larger. You get these lava, well, it wouldn't be lava, these basalts, like chunks that are broken off and rising above the grass here. And if you can make that out on the top there, just like our Polypodium virginium, capping the top of granite boulders up and down the White Mountains, up and down the East Coast in general. Polypodium pellucidum is the first guy to kind of make a name for himself, colonizing the tops of these chunks of magma. Cool habit to it. Polypodiums are interesting. Most of them are obligate lithophytes. Pretty cool to see the little stigmas on that coprosma. I was hoping we'd get to see that. Highly reduced flowers. A lot of plants that grow in habitats that are both damp and exposed and windy kind of just convert to wind pollination. I can only imagine that that's why it's setting up those two little antennas there is some form. It's got to be wind pollinated. Anyway, yeah, Polypodium pellucidum on the rock there. We're gonna go find the little cabin over here and see if we can pull aside for some lunch, see the silver swords, and then hike ourselves back out of here. Look at that, Pukiave, Polypodium pellucidum, which has a native name that's escaping me right now. And this yellow flower right here that you see, that's a species of Onathra that's not native. That's pretty much been the only dominant non-native plant that we've fortunately seen, although I don't know the status of all of these grasses. I highly doubt the majority of this grass is native here, but Onathra, I can't remember if it's Onathra fragrans or Onathra odorata, fragrant evening primrose is the name for it, and that's a pretty prolific non-native up here, unfortunately. You can see how recent the volcanism is here. Look at this. This just flowed down outside of a lava tube. Everything here, just clear evidence of recent volcanism. We're not even over to the cinder cone side yet. We're just looking at this old, I think this is lava. I'll have to look it up. I forget that Hawaiians, they have names for all the different types of lava, and they were so detailed, and their descriptions and their classifications were so useful. I think that they've been borrowed by the scientific community, which is pretty cool. But look, I thought this was just a trail. No, sir. The trail is just following This flow of lava, that's insane. It's absolutely insane. Either this is a disagreement or we're about to witness some baby nenes being made. I think it's actually the latter. Oh boy. They're cute bastards, huh? How did a goose, just imagine you're a goose and you just end up on these islands. Oh, look at these guys too. I don't know what those are. Fascinating. So right there is essentially the whole reason I was excited to come to Hawaii. Right along the trail here, you've got a beautiful example of our Gyroxiphium sanvichensis, a specific subspecies endemic to Haleakalā. The Maui and Hawaii have two different subspecies, so this is it. Hina is the Hawaiian name, I believe, something to do with being silvery, and this is a prime example of island radiation. I feel bad that things not blooming, but they don't bloom this time of year anyway, and I can show you one of the dead stalks behind me. So our Gyroxiphium sanvichensis, the Haleakalā silver sword, or the Hawaii silver sword, whatever you want to call it here, is an example of an adaptive radiation. At some point, a few million years ago, who knows exactly when, a bird must have come from California or Mexico with a seed of a tarweed, something in the tribe Maui. This is in the family Asteraceae, the same family as sunflowers. A tarweed came here to Hawaii and sprouted and adapted and evolved and radiated into 30 some odd different species across 3 different genera. Our Gyroxiphium is this one. We've already seen one of them today, but this is the guy right here, Debatia menziesii. So our Gyroxiphium, Debatia, and a third genus which escapes me are the lineage of that one tarweed that came here and went itself off there and radiated. It went crazy. It got to an island where it had no competition, no predators, nothing was trying to eat it, nothing was trying to mess with it, and it just got crazy. Flawlessly adapted to life inside of a volcanic crater at about probably 6,500 feet elevation. Goes up higher too. They're up there on the ridge at like 8,000 feet, but down in the craters where they really have their heyday. And I'll be honest, when they bloom, they put up a nice tall stalk of like purple looking flowers, but they're not all that impressive. These are monocarpic, so it's basically a sunflower that evolved to act like an agave. It grows for, I think they say 1 to 50 years. Get some water. 1 to 50 years, bloom once, and they die. Unlike Debatia, which clearly forms a nice little shrub habit and will bloom many times over the course of its life. Now, the fascinating thing about Debatia and our Gyroxiphium is that these things actually hybridize. These are each other's closest relatives on the island. Well, there's other species of our Gyroxiphium, but you get the idea. They're all in that same radiation of silver swords. Okay? Now, I just happen to think that this whole concept of island endemism, island radiations is fascinating. And I mean, sometimes you have to come to a place like this to see something that only exists in a place like this. Perfectly suited to its environment, and its environment is the perfect habitat for it. Nobody does it better than Gyroxiphium sanvichensis. If the flowers were on the thing, they just look like regular aster flowers. I'll pause this for a second. I'll show you one of the stalks that flowered and died off. They don't flower. They flower over the summer, basically. So November is long past the bloom time anyway. But we'll go check out what this stalk down here looks like. And right here is what they look like once they flower and they die. So they would have a nice stalk growing up here. I can find a picture of one. They'd have a nice stalk growing up. They flower, they spread their seed, they wither away and they die. It's called being monocarpic. Agave do that as well. I'm not sure if all agave do that, but most agave do. I'm trying to think of other monocarpic plants that grow for years and years and years and then pass away. But we don't really get many of those in New England because it doesn't really make sense to do that. But yeah, he was up there, a little further up the trail. And behind me here, you get another Debatia. The Debatia become plentiful before the silver swords do. You've got another one there. That one doesn't look like it's doing so hot. but the one up on the hill looked like a chunky guy. Debatium and ZCI. This one's flowering too. Debatium and ZCI in the Haleakalā crater. That's about all I got. That was the entire, in my mind, I can't say that was the entire point of the trip, but that was sure a highlight. That's what I've been waiting this entire time to do. If I wanted to keep going down the trail here, go over this hill here, this is supposed to be a whole loop of them, but we gotta be, you know, it's already 1:30. It's already getting late in the afternoon. We gotta hike ourselves all the way back out. Not all the way up that way, but somewhere off in those clouds there is the lands from whence we came. We get a nice little downhill break before we have to go. I'll cut myself off again. So one last goodbye to Argyroxiphium sanvicensis, the pinnacle example of adaptive island radiation for the Maui tribe. This guy doesn't get enough love, the Debatium and ZCI. There's a few species of Debatia, a few species of Argyroxiphium. There's a genus that does not occur on this island, so I didn't bother to look into it too much. But there are 3 genera in that tribe that are all endemic genera to Hawaii. And that Argyroxiphium over there, that particular subspecies of silver sword is endemic to Haleakalā. I guess it's actually doing better than the species that grows on the big island of Hawaii. So the species grows on 2 islands, each with its own unique subspecies, and this guy is only growing on Haleakalā. Debatium and ZCI, I'm not sure how widespread in the island this gets, nor is that endemic to Maui. I think they get that one on we get that one on the big island too, maybe other places. I honestly forget. I took all these notes and then I got out here and I just got too stoked. But come out here and see them. They're actually here to see you if you don't mind doing the 8 or so mile hike down to get to them, but it's well worth it in my humble opinion. So we're gonna hike out of here now. And on that note, we'll probably squeeze in one more video, but this has been probably the one I've been most excited to make here on Maui and Hawaii in general. Maybe I'll come back someday and I'll do the entire Kapo Gap from the shoreline up to the summit of Haleakalā. But for now, I think we're satisfied just coming to see these plants and getting out of here. So on the way down, on the way down, I actually passed this plant, didn't talk about it, so I'll put this at the appropriate part of the video right after we kind of began. This is a species of Fragaria. This is a strawberry, and this is Fragaria chiloensis. Nice fuzzy undersides there. Now, Fragaria chiloensis has a what is known as a not circumtropical, is an amphitropical distribution. That took me a minute there. So this is a plant that grows in the mountains of Lake Chile in South America, and then it also grows in Alaska. Okay, follow me here. And what it does is basically it's absent from the tropics of the world, with Hawaii representing its one tropical locale that it kind of lives in and it's native to. Now, why does it do that? Well, we're just about 8,000 feet up here, and most amphitropical plants are distributed by birds, so ergo, some bird must have shitted out a Fragaria chiloensis seed here at some point. And what is even more interesting is that this is the species that has been hybridized with either Fragaria vesca or Fragaria virginiana to produce the commercial hybrid garden strawberry. So there you go, fun little culinary horticultural fact, and a cool example of amphitropical distribution, albeit one occurring at very high elevation in the tropics. Remember, this mountain goes up to 10,000 feet. It's basically a sky island at about 21 degrees north latitude. Kind of barely in the tropics, but still very much tropical, especially at sea level. But as one moves up in elevation, as we've discussed, where I live at 45 degrees north, you move up in elevation, you start getting Arctic plants. You move up in elevation in Hawaii, you start getting plants that are more comfortable at temperate, or not even temperate, that's not even what you would call this. I don't know, it's a little bit cold and I don't know what you would call it. Cloud forest, tropical upland, subtropical upland, I'm not sure. Montane, subalpine, whatever the hell you want to call it. Certainly alpine up at this elevation, but there you go. Fragaria chiloensis, one of the progenitors of the garden strawberry, and a weird disjunct here in Hawaii where it is native, but it only occurs at elevation. You go up to the Pacific Northwest, and you can find this growing much, much lower. Same species, got there presumably by bird dispersal. That's how most amphitropical plants get around. And this is almost a textbook example of one. And of course, if you don't feel like hiking all the way out to the Silver Sword Trail, you can always come up to the little summit thing and see what they look like in bloom, because that's about it. So we saw one about maybe that size out on the trail. And this is what they look like when they're fully grown and blooming here at 10,000 feet. And over there it looks like they've got one of the hybrids. But they get huge. They get pretty big. Yeah, I didn't want to get too close to the one that I saw on the trail because they've got really shallow roots, and if you step on them, you can prematurely kill them. But that's nothing but a capitula of little asteraceae flowers. Anyway, it's really cold up here. I think we're going to get going back down to where we were, but that's what they look like when they actually flower. These ones are wrapping up. October is just about the end of the season. Here it is. Here we are in November, but they're pretty cool looking.